Special Reports is a daily show that will cover issues surrounding the economic collapse. All our reports and daily alert news are backed up by source links. We work very hard to bring you the facts and we research everything before presenting the report. Subscribe for latest on financial crisis, oil price, global economic collapse, dollar collapse, gold, silver, Bitcoin, global reset, new world order, economic collapse, economic news, political, geopolitical news. Today, we talk about Donald Trump as currency confusion continues. The U.S. president blames China, but even a basic understanding of economics shows it as his own policies that bloat the dollar. Next month, the U.S. Department of the Treasury is due to submit to Congress its biannual report detailing which countries, if any, are manipulating their currencies to gain an unfair trade advantage. For his part, President Donald Trump is already accusing China of doing so, as he did throughout the 2016 election campaign. And he is reportedly trying to influence the Treasury Department as deliberations. What has changed since the last report in April? That document, like similar reports written during the previous two administrations, did not find China guilty of manipulation. In fact, the last time the Treasury Department declared China, or anyone else, a manipulator was in 1994. The reason for this is simple: China does not meet the three criteria that Congress has set for determining currency manipulation. It has not been persistently intervening in foreign exchange markets, at least not to push down its currency, and it is not running an overall current account surplus greater than or equal to 3% of GDP. Its surplus in 2017 was 1.3%. China does meet the third criterion, a bilateral trade surplus, with the U.S. in excess of $20 BN, 15 BN. But Congress was wrong to set the bilateral balance as a criterion in the first place. The huge U.S. trade deficit worldwide is sufficient to explain the bilateral deficit. China accounts for 15% of the world economy, so even its proportionate share of the U.S.'s $600 BN deficit would be $90 BN, well over the $20 BN threshold. Yes, the bilateral deficit is much higher than even that level, but that is partly because China's exports to the U.S. contain so many imported inputs. So, as of April, China had met just one of the three congressional criteria, and thus did not qualify as a currency manipulator. Germany, India, Japan, South Korea, and Switzerland each met two criteria. Since then, the yuan has depreciated by 6% against the dollar. But that is because the dollar itself has appreciated by 7% on a broad average basis against its trading partners' currencies. Exchange rates do not always accord with economists' models. But in this case, the dollar's appreciation can be explained by Trump's own economic policies. For starters, Trump and congressional Republicans have pursued a massive pro-cyclical fiscal expansion, producing virtually unprecedented peacetime budget deficits in the absence of a recession. This expansion includes the tax cuts passed in December, rapid increases in government spending, and recent proposals for further tax cuts. Macroeconomic theory predicts that such policies will drive up interest rates, attract capital from abroad, and strengthen the dollar. That is what happened when the U.S. had a similar fiscal monetary mix under President Ronald Reagan in 1981 to 1984. Moreover, Trump has launched a trade war by imposing import tariffs on America's major trading partners. Most recently, he announced tariffs on a further $200 BN of Chinese exports to take effect on the 24th of September. He thinks this will improve the U.S. trade balance, but does not understand that if foreign exporters are cut off from the U.S. market, they will not have the dollars to buy U.S. goods. A tariff-induced reduction in U.S. imports can be offset in a number of ways. Most tangibly, other countries can retaliate against the U.S. by imposing their own tariffs on, say, U.S. agricultural exports. But even if they don't, measures that make it harder for foreign exporters to earn dollars will create a dollar scarcity, which, in an environment of floating exchange rates, will automatically boost the greenback's value. Trump's escalation of the trade war over the course of 2018 appears to have had the effect on the dollar predicted by economic theory. To be sure, China did hold down the value of the yuan 10 or 15 years ago. Alongside rising trade and current account surpluses, the People's Bank of China maintained a policy of intervening in the foreign exchange market to dampen appreciation, thereby amassing huge foreign exchange reserves. But China then adjusted its currency policy. The yuan appreciated by 37% between 2004 and 2014, at which point its undervaluation had been eliminated. In 2014, capital started to flow out of China, and the currency started to depreciate, perhaps owing to a slowdown in the Chinese economy, relatively strong growth in the US, and a corresponding shift in their respective monetary policies. Just as the People's Bank had intervened to dampen the appreciation of the yuan from 2004 to 2014, it began intervening to dampen its depreciation after 2014. This pattern of intervention is called leaning against the wind. The People's Bank spent a record-setting $1 trying to stop the yuan's slide after 2014. If Chinese authorities had acceded to U.S. demands and allowed the market to determine the exchange rate, the yuan would have depreciated further still, and U.S. exporters would have had a harder time competing. Eventually, U.S. politicians came to understand this basic fact. The last one to grasp it was Trump. As late as the 2nd of April, 2017, Trump labeled the Chinese the world champions of currency manipulation, only to reverse his position a week later, telling the Wall Street Journal they were not currency manipulators. After that, he let the subject rest for a year, before reprising his original accusation this summer. As it happens, the year during which Trump stopped accusing China of pushing down its currency was also the year that China suspended its efforts to prop up the yuan. Its foreign exchange reserves stopped declining in 2017. But now the Chinese have resumed their efforts to defend the currency just when Trump is renewing his accusations. To slow the yuan's depreciation, the People's Bank of China recently said it would apply a so-called counter-cyclical factor in its daily fixing of the currency against the dollar. Why does Trump keep getting things backwards? It is not just his perverse personality. Trump makes the charge when the yuan depreciates, which also happens to be when the People's Bank of China intervenes to support it. What he misses are two fundamental drivers of that depreciation: his own fiscal and trade policies. China's premier hits back at Trump's attacks on currency manipulation, vowing to keep the yuan basically stable. China's premier has struck back at claims by U.S. President Donald Trump that Beijing has been engaged in currency manipulation to bolster its competitiveness amid the escalating global trade war. Li Keqiang, China's second most powerful official, used a keynote speech at a World Economic Forum event in the industrial city of Tianjin to vow not to pursue a policy of currency devaluation to counteract tariff measures imposed by the Trump administration. In a speech extolling the virtues of multilateralism and free trade at a World Economic Forum gathering, Li noted that recent fluctuations in the Chinese currency have been seen by some as an intentional measure on the part of Beijing to reduce prices of China's exports to foreign buyers. It was a clear reference to comments from Trump, who in the past has threatened to put China on an official list of currency manipulators, and just last month repeated his belief that China has been artificially weakening its currency. Li directly denied this was the case, saying the decline was due to market forces, and adding the government would not allow a continued devaluation. Persistent depreciation of China's currency, the RMB, will only do more harm than good to our economy, Li said, according to a real-time translation provided at the event. He followed up by repeating that a weaker currency will only come at a cost of damaging China's economic environment. China would stick to market-oriented foreign exchange reform, Li said, adding that the currency would be kept basically stable at an adaptive level. Like those of most emerging market nations, China's currency has been weakening this year as the U.S. dollar has steadily strengthened, largely due to the Federal Reserve steadily lifting its official interest rate, but also partly because of some of the Trump administration's policies, including its corporate tax cuts, which has encouraged repatriation of capital held abroad by US-based multinationals. The yuan has fallen 9% against the dollar this year, partly neutralizing the price impact of the U.S. government's 25% tariffs on $US $50 billion worth of exports. However, the next round of tariffs proposed by the Trump administration involves a 25% import tax on more than 5,000 items. While he did not speak about tariffs, Li also used his speech to address other key complaints of the Trump administration: intellectual property theft and the unequal treatment of foreign companies in China, and reaffirmed Beijing's commitment to continue to open up its economy. No unilateralism will offer a viable solution to global economic challenges, Li said. He said penalties for intellectual property theft would be dealt with seriously, with doubled or even tripled unaffordable penalties for breaches in order to ensure firms are comfortable bringing their business to China. Every right needs to be fully protected, Li said, adding that all violations will be dealt with to the full extent of the law. He told the audience of entrepreneurs, investors, and executives that if they found they were being treated unfairly, they should file a complaint with the central government. He warned that officials will be punished if they are found to be treating companies unequally. Li said the central government would continue to reduce taxes and fees for businesses. This is not empty talk. The government will make sure these are materialized with concrete actions. Thanks for watching. Tell us what you think in the comments section below.